All right, so what do we have so far? We have our flat color, everything filled in, even the whites. We have flat highlights, kind of give it a little bit more emphasis. And then we've started to build up our duotone color. But these are our duotone shadows, right? And you can do them both on the same layer, but it's easier to separate them out. So if I want more duotone shadows, what can I do? I can go to my flat color layer, and what if I just do this? This is an easy way to play with duotone. I'm just going to select all but just the outside shape, for instance, just to try something. You know what? I have a much better way of doing that. I'm going to select, with contiguous turned on, I'm going to go to my vector layer, select just the outside shape with contiguous turned on. There we go. Then what I can do is go to my flat color layer, let's see, and I want to shrink this. So I'm going to, just to show you what I'm doing, I'll duplicate it so I have something to modify. Unlock. So I'll duplicate that kind of black shape. So this is what I have. Just that. Now I'll take that. This is complicated, but this is what gets me excited about things. I'm going to transform that and shrink that in. And that gives me a much kind of tighter selection. Okay. Then I'm going to select the empty space in the middle of that and turn that layer off. So that's my fancy way of selecting just the inside of my flat color. Everyone with me? Now I duplicate that, and so I get kind of this inner flat color, and I'm going to use that as a duotone. So this is kind of a mask I've created for the inside and outside. And why don't I just fill that mask in completely so I can use it later with a contiguous paint bucket. There we go. All right, so now I have this interior. I can make that lighter or darker, but I'm still working on my shadow duotone, so I'm going to make it darker. And I'm mostly interested in this outer edge here. And that's pretty effective. Now, duotones are traditionally just white and black added to your local color. But you can also play with them a little bit. So if I think that's kind of too deep and dark, I could also go to Image Adjustment, Color Balance, which is my favorite adjuster because it's so subtle. And I can make it just a little bit warmer and darker. A little bit greener and darker. So you see how subtle that is. And some of my favorite duotones are quite subtle. Then I can put my flat highlights on that. Then I can put my duotone shadows on that. And then I can select out different parts from that, right, and play with it. Or select that part of the flat color and just adjust it individually until it's more of a color I'm happy with, either with the hue or the saturation. I can even try hue saturation and just change it completely. So what would this look like if this was more of like a green color? Because green and blue are school colors. So I can lighten it. And this does not replace my flat colors. This is all on a duotone layer. So you can really experiment, kind of find your way. Yeah, that kind of greenish gray I'm actually liking. It's just so slightly green. Yeah. Now I'm pretty excited. I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to make this, put it on top of things. I'm going to select it. And I'm going to fill it with a gradient. And we haven't done this since the cloud creature. Now gradients are soft edge duotone color. So I'm going to choose a gradient. And the darkest it's going to be is this color. And the lightest it's going to be is maybe a yellower version of that green, like that. Now it can be a linear gradient. So let's see how that works. Say OK, do the gradient tool, and I'm just going to pull it top to bottom. Or I can make it a radial gradient. By going out from the middle. Like this on one side. And I think this will be the most effective. But if I want it stronger, I'll shorten it. Yeah, so maybe like that. And then on the other side, I'm going to do a new layer. Select it again. I'll just paint it the opposite, where I go from the out to the in, just halfway. And so this is a way you can use gradients and even have kind of a hard seam somewhere. You see that seam I have? What if I make that seam a little bit more meaningful? Having it cut, right through the center. So I'm going to take my polygonal lasso tool, take my gradient layer there, go from here, try to cut cleanly through to the other side. Oh, I wish they lined up exactly. They don't quite, but they'll work edge to edge here. And now I'll duplicate that, and I'll paint that with a different kind of gradient. Select the outside of it, select the inverse, paint it with a gradient. Try subtle variations. There we go. So you have that kind of seam there. That can be interesting. Because they're separate, I can keep working with them. Oops. Until I get what I want. Remember, Photoshop's good at selecting empty space. So instead of trying to select the gradient, I select the empty space around it. Then I invert the selection. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Making it really subtle. There we go. Now that, and I'll merge those two together just so they're one item. That is a soft edge duotone addition. So that's the flat color. This is a duotone of that flat color using lights and dark versions of it. And it doesn't cut the variation between them. It smooths it, it softens it. It'd be like if I wanted a soft edge duotone of the dark color of the wings, I could duplicate it and then I could just go to Filter Gaussian Blur. and really blur them out. And then turn off the cut edge behind, and you'll see that's soft edge duotone. But it's not as effective on this illustration as the hard edge. But you can play with different variations. That's what's so fun. I can work on brightening it a little bit. I can play with the color balance of it a little bit. I can even combine the soft edge with the cut edge. There's no rights or wrongs. You're just trying to have full control of your project. And we try to use layers in a smart and informed way, which is why we spent so long on composite projects in the beginning of the semester. So subtlety in duotone works really well. I might even just decide to take my flat colors and brighten them up. A little bit more. Okay, now I can do duotone color tints or highlights. And you can do that in a variety of ways. I'm going to make it really simple and just take my lasso, grab some areas that I would think highlights would make sense, like on the edges of these feathers, kind of like I did with the whites on the wings. And duplicate them and then move them up. And there you have it. So now I have those. If I want to soften them, I can. I can go to blur and Gaussian blur. And just give them a slight softening. And you'll see how that is very forgiving. In fact, I might do that with that really slight softening on even my flat highlights. Yeah, and that helps that line kind of fall behind the black outlines. Let's see, if I turn contiguous on, I can just take it, because I lighten my flat colors, I can just play with taking certain ones back down to brighter tones, like that. Or cutting a shape in them. As I often do. And just cut that out. Give them the appearance of some eyelashes, maybe. Cut that out. Very dramatic. So coloring is meant to support the illustration you have, not to save it, not to fix it. But it can be hard to do no harm when you're choosing your colors and you're choosing how much to build them up. And it's safer to go less saturated, less intense with your colors, which is why I often steal them from sources.